disrupting poverty, creating opportunities, and brighter futures. Learn how at childfund.org. That's childfund.org.
If you suffer from excruciating back pain and sciatica, pay careful attention. According to a study in the medical journal Spine, back surgeries to alleviate pain frequently backfire, leaving patients in more pain than before the surgery. A second study from the University of Cincinnati's College of Medicine provides clear evidence that 74% of surgeries for the back fail. But there is a solution and an end to your suffering. Dr. Fernando Ranella, he's a medical doctor and the founder of the Center for Back Pain Management, where he specializes in the elimination of back pain and sciatica quickly, easily, without surgery or any pain medication whatsoever. Dr. Ranella accepts Medicare and most insurance. He has a location in Delray and one in Fort Lauderdale. Call 561-819-6325. That's 561-819-6325.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the Caregiver Reality Show with your hosts, David Levy and Paul Vattiato, who bring you more than a combined 25 years of practical experience, helping thousands of family caregivers, helping them find solutions to the challenges and frustrations presented by this important responsibility. So if you are in the position of caring for a spouse or a parent, a loved one who is no longer able to care for themselves, or if you know someone who is, this hour will be worth the listening. Now, let's tune in to today's edition of Caregiver Reality with your hosts, David Levy and Paul Vattiato.
And good evening, South Florida, America, and the world. It's 5 o'clock here on the East Coast. This is the Caregiver Reality Hour. Those of you in drive time in our local market, we hope, we won't know if you have us tuned in, but I hope you do. And obviously, you can see us simultaneously on caregiverreality.com, AMP2 TV, WWNNradio.com, iHeart, just about anywhere and everywhere. And as I say every week, when we're done, the show gets posted on the caregiverreality.com website, and from there, it goes everywhere. We couldn't believe the amount of people. They have a way of checking who looks, using the World Wide Web and all kinds of other fancy stuff.
Unless North Korea gets in the way.
Well, what can I say? Without a cyber attack on the website, which I'm not looking for,
right.
We have a reach that really is worldwide. And with 100 million minimum caregivers out there, at least that we're aware of, that it's a pretty big audience, and we really appreciate the fact that so many of you have been loyally following us, and we hope tonight will be no different, and we'll be bringing you a good show. We have on Jenny Sanders and Kevin Dixon from KD Consulting, and I'll tell you a little more about them. They'll be on. They're sitting here silently. He's just wearing a suit, so don't get overexcited. For those of you on radio, he looks wonderful. For those of you watching, you'll have to make up your own minds. And his beautiful wife is with us, and that takes no second guessing whatsoever. All right. So anyway, as I ask every week, Paul, how was the week in caregiving?
Well, David, thank you, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us again, and a very happy holiday to each and every one of you, to our caregivers and to the ones they take care of. I have a lot less hair this week than I did last week because I think I pulled a good bunch of it out. This has not been a good week with Debbie. She's been lots of problems with GI, back to a couple of doctors. And, part of what we have to do as caregivers is make the decisions of what should be done, what should not be done, what are the risks involved. And we had to face a couple of those things this week, and we've opted not to go ahead with certain tests. And hopefully things are going to work out. But it's, as you know, you're my support system. It's been really a stressful
It
week.
has. Matter of fact, for the first time in a long time, I really got worried about you this week. Not that I'm not always concerned about Debbie, but I could see you were being pushed to the limits emotionally of your caregiving. And for those of you out there, when it comes to family caregiving, especially at holiday times, remember, other people, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever it may be, are celebrating. But the caregiver, it's no different. It's another 7/24 day in the trenches. The emotions, the difficulties, the requirements, all of your efforts don't change just because everybody else can take a day off.
In fact, they get worse sometimes.
Right, because the holidays bring out of a lot of emotional issues about what used to be, how the family used to be before dad, mom, whoever it may be, got sick or got injured or whatever the case may be. And sometimes it's hard to find the positive side of the holidays when it doesn't look like any other day of the year that you've been dealing with day in and day out up until now. So as a caregiver and somebody who understands it after all these decades in the business, I give every one of you hat off, kudos for being able to do what you're doing, keep on doing it, and you've got to make sure that you do take some time for yourself. And sometimes when the family gets together, it's a good time for you to take a break. You know, grab your brother or your sister and tell your aunt or your uncle, keep an eye on dad or mom. We're going out to the mall, even though it may be a little late to get some of that shopping done, or just get out, go for a walk, stop off somewhere, have a hamburger, get a drink, whatever it is that breaks up the routine, because you deserve it. Remember always on this long airline flight, you got to put your oxygen mask on first, and never, ever forget that, because if the caregiver goes down, now we got two people that need care, and nobody can do the same job that you can. I don't care who you hire, who you bring in, not that your siblings aren't capable, or your brothers and your sisters or other relative, but this is tough stuff, and you've done a great, great job, and hats off and a pat on your back.
Yeah. To our caregivers out there, I thank you for your comments and for your loyalty and Facebook page, Caregiver Reality. Share your stories with us. Tell us what you're going through. Tell us what your struggles are. I mean, David and I have a combined 50 years in doing this. This show, Caregiver Reality, exists to help you. And you can write us, either Paul or David, at caregiverreality.com, or you can go on our Facebook page, share your stories. Others are going through it. And remember, the standard is you do the best you can with what you have at that time. There is no perfection in caregiving. It's making do. David?
Right. And sometimes just getting through the day is a great day.
Yes, it is.
All right. And never, ever forget that. There is no standard out there, but sometimes as caregivers, we set a very high bar, and we expect ourselves always to get over that and be a combination of, you know, Mother Teresa and Florence Nightingale. Doesn't happen that way.
David, I was looking, I had cravings for chocolate this week. That's not a good sign.
Oh, well, I know you're not pregnant, but...
No.
Actually, we got somebody sent us the Godiva, Christmas gift package. And
comes with a gym membership?
It comes with a gym membership, but it also comes with a very quiet pair of sneakers to get to the refrigerator. All right, and crack open one of those 70% chocolate bars at 12 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But anyway.
David, what's your perspective this week?
Oh, thank you. It's to not talk so much. No, but from my perspective, and bear with me, folks, that 2015 will be upon us in another 9 days. And for Caregiver Reality, this has been a great year.
Amen.
We've grown our listener viewer base from ground zero to I don't know how many millions of people in 100+ countries in every one of the 50 states. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. We can't do it without you. We love what we do. We've established unique relationships in the philanthropic, financial, addiction, mental health, and autism world, as well as aligning family caregiving with disease-specific situations like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, frontal temporal lobe. We're going to continue to combine our non-clinical family caregiving with all of those clinical and broader issues of mental health, as I said, and not exclusively, although tonight we have two people who are very, very skilled in the mental health field, and you'll be hearing from them when I shut up. Paul and I have come through a difficult year, obviously, with personal caregiving, but any of you who are listening to the show know that we start every show with what's going on, so you know as much about what's happening right now. And for Suzette, it wasn't a great week. It wasn't as bad as some I've seen, but, she's struggling. The holidays aren't the best for her either. It brings back memories. It's 11 years since we lost our son, and it happened at the holiday time. So, sometimes difficult memories. But
and
she'll
especially
make
when
it
you're
through.
not feeling well.
And especially when you're not feeling well. But somehow or other, if we're lucky, Paul and I have reservations on Christmas Day
Yes, we
at
do.
1 p.m., not just the two of us, for the four of us to try and have Christmas dinner. Now, the interesting thing about that is we're both now renowned for being the people you invite and who have to cancel at the last minute. So it'll probably be a race between Paul and I to see who cancels on who first, but hopefully that won't happen, and we'll have a chance
Or
to
it'll
have
be you and I eating alone.
right, the Christmas goose, whatever. Starting this year, we'll be broadcasting almost exclusively through our new studio in Boca Raton, which will give us the flexibility to widen our footprint. In the caregiver world, we'll be able to do live audience shows, panel discussions, and a myriad of events that just can't happen inside of a traditional radio studio. However, we're deeply indebted to Beasley Broadcasting for the faith they've had in this show and highlighting this show, along with others, on their streaming video and making it a part of the Beasley family. We are very grateful for that.
Indeed.
And we're looking to expand, too, with them and with others around the country. With our new media capability of streaming radio and unique productions, we'll make our reach even greater and hopefully grow our family caregiver audience, which numbers in the tens of millions here in the U.S. and 100+ million around the world. We look to expand our trust relationship with you, our audience, to bring you other beneficial people and things and relationships that we've been developing, that we have thoroughly vetted to make sure whatever you see and hear on Caregiver Reality is accurate and up to date as it is absolutely possible to do. We're grateful to Freddie Santori, Linda, Gio, and Freddie Jr. for supplying the wisdom and technical expertise through AMP2 TV to keep us on the leading edge of the newest in technology, social media, and the World Wide Web, so that we can bring you the content and information where you want it, when you want it, and whatever piece of equipment you want to put it on, all right? So going forward, we have a lot of exciting, relevant, and unique things planned for our audience, as well as in-depth research and non-clinical family caregiving, which Paul and I have pioneered, and will continue to be subject matter experts and leaders to all who seek our advice and support. Lastly, to Paul, without whom none of this would be happening at the pace and professionalism it has, and of course to our wives, who've shown us what true courage is and who support us far more than we are ever able to do for them as caregivers.
So true.
So to all I say happy holiday, our best wishes for a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year, and may 2015 be filled with all the things that you wish for and maybe even a little bit more. So thank you again.
Thank you, David. Nice way to start the new year, and we're so grateful for all that our audience has done for us, and we're here for you.
Right. And I see by the old clock on the wall, using that illiterism from way back when, that it's time for us to take a station break. We'll be right back, and very soon we're going to have on Jenny and Kevin and get some insight into what's going on in the world of mental health and what they're doing before they head out to Vegas and go skiing in Colorado. I'm jealous. Take it away.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you taking care of a spouse or loved one who can no longer take care of himself or herself? Are you dealing with Alzheimer's disease and don't know what to do? Do you feel burned out, frustrated, and just don't know where to turn? You've tried doctors, lawyers, and mental health professionals and have come to realize that they don't have practical answers to these questions. What you need are experts, non-clinical family caregivers with 25 years of active experience helping thousands of family caregivers like yourself. People who can help you provide a better quality of life for yourself and your loved one. Who you need are David Levy or Paul Vattiato. Reach David at david@caregiverreality.com or reach Paul at caregiverreality.com and let them help you pick the right path towards improving the quality of life for you, the caregiver, and your loved one.
This is Paul Vattiato, co-host of the Caregiver Reality Hour. Be sure to join us Tuesdays at 5 p.m., 1470 a.m. on your radio dial, iHeartRadio, or live stream on caregiverreality.com/live show. Be sure to visit us on our website, caregiverreality.com, and like us on Facebook. Join the conversation.
This is Caregiver Reality with gerontologist David Levy and caregiver expert Paul Vattiato, who ask you to call in and speak with them on the air toll-free at 888-565-1470. That's 888-565-1470 to share a story or important information. Now, back to today's Caregiver Reality Show.
And we're back. And one of the things I wanted to say this year, we've been very pleased to have had Medical Research Charities as our sponsor. They're a wonderful organization. I talk about them every week. And but now they've got to go focus on the federal campaign, which is where they generate most of their money from. And this is now in the next few weeks where they've got to really concentrate their efforts. And I wish them the best. And hopefully in the future, I'll keep them in my thoughts. Occasionally, I'll keep them on the air, and I hope that we can continue to build a great relationship. In the meantime, medicalresearchcharities.org, you can go there, make a donation, or pick any one of their 29 underlying charities, each of which is worthy of a donation. You pick, you choose, your choice. And anyway, now, sitting in our studio, all right, as Jenny Sanders and Kevin Dixon, and they are KD Consulting. Kevin has more than 15 years of hands-on experience in every facet of substance abuse interventions and treatment. Mr. Dixon, that's Paul wrote that, all right, is a nationally acclaimed speaker who has raised awareness and education about substance abuse and early prevention. Kevin has been a featured guest on many national television programs where he helps demystify the subjects of intervention and recovery. He's appeared on CBS The Early Show, Dr. Keith Abloh, Nancy Grace, Larry King Live, and on MTV and MSNBC. And now, the cherry on the top of the cupcake, he's been on the Caregiver Reality Hour, and it streams everywhere. You can't do any better than that, Kevin. And Jenny has excelled in the field of addiction for over 10 years, in addition to facilitating the day-to-day operations and family services of KD. Now, can you ask her any more than that? And in a moment, Paul's going to take over, and at that particular point, I'm going to move this microphone over, because one of the limitations that we will not have going forward in the new studio is 4 people in here with only 3 mics. All right? So it's a 3-mic night, but it's 4 great people. So, Paul, take it away.
Thank you. And Jenny and Kevin, we really appreciate you taking time out during the holiday season to join us today. I know that KD is part of the Lifetime Intervention Network, which is a great organization. I know a big part of what you do are interventions, and you're interventionist. Jenny, why don't you tell us a little bit, what is an interventionist and what do you actually do?
Well, an interventionist job is to help confront an individual and bring awareness of their self-destructive behaviors. With the interventions ability, we want to work with the family, help the family change some of the dynamics that have created what the circumstance has gone to. So,
Is it a family issue, or is it just the particular person who has the addiction?
most cases, it's a family dynamic. It's not just the individual. A lot of times, the families get addicted to the behaviors. And that's where we come in to help change some of that,
Right.
to get healing for just the family along with the patient. We want both parties to get healing.
Is
Can-
that like, I'm sorry, Paul, just
That's
one
okay,
question,
go
and
ahead.
I know it's yours to run. Is that distinctive from enabling, or is that codependency, or what would you kind of decipher that as? Or maybe that's a Kevin question, but I think you're smarter.
It's it is considered families get to the point where these behaviors start to enable, and they get in a vicious cycle with the individual. And how do we change that? It's getting them healthy, giving them healthy tools so they can change some of the dynamics so we're not repeating the same cycle.
Okay.
Good.
Paul?
Kevin, I know you deal with a lot of families that are really in acute crisis when you're called in on there. Tell us a little bit, what is the makings of a good interventionist?
Well, first I wanted to just say thank you both for having us on. And, you know, beside every good man is a great woman, but we all know that, right, guys?
Well, actually, across the table.
So
I think he went to Jared's.
yes, there you go. There you go. It's a great question, Paul, and really the makings of a good interventionist. You know, when you're looking at someone in this type of field, is do they have the credentials? Do they have the education? Do they have the background? You know, there's several national credentialing boards that really help keep the integrity and the accountability and the education of an interventionist specialist and monitoring boards. So it's really important when you're looking at these types of professionals, you know, to ask those types of questions. Do you have an education in the field of addiction or mental health? What is that education? What type of certification or training do you have? Do you belong to any of these credentialing boards? And what are those acronyms, you know, that healthcare professionals, you know, sometimes give us, and it overwhelms us.
Or hide behind.
Or hide behind. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it is a difficult job for a family to get a good fit, one that is actually going to work for them. But when you first see families, many times they're really not ready to get into recovery at that point. And when you're called in those situations, what really then is your role? I want to let both of you take a shot at that.
Well, I think that, you know, society, America, you know, around the world, just human beings in general are, you know, we're told that there's nothing you can do until your loved ones hit a bottom. Right? You know, and really what we believe is, and what I've seen in my humble experience in the past, you know, 15 years plus, is that when you're the family, when you are mentally and you are emotionally, when you are physically, when you're financially, when you're all of those things, you, the individual, the family, when you're at your bottom, that's when you're really ready to deal with, you know, addiction or mental health or whatever it is, and the patient. We all focus on, you know, or we're all told that there's nothing you do until your loved one, till the individual hits those bottoms. But when we talk about, you know, the dynamics of addiction or mental health and denial, it's when you, the family, when the people that are around them, because it is a family disease, as, you know, you alluded to, Jenny, just a moment ago. It is a family disease. Mm-hmm. And so I think that, you know, when the family is at that very painful place, that's when they're really ready to deal with the issue.
Jenny, wouldn't it be really helpful if before they did hit that bottom, because sometimes that bottom could be death, that they at least reach out and get some advice, get some counseling along the way, even though they may not be ready?
And that's part of our jobs. We want to create and shape and mold and change some of the things that they've been doing, because it's not working. You're trying different things and trying to control the issues, but it's no longer helping the patient. It's no longer helping the family dynamics. You're staying still sick in that sickness.
And again, you know, getting them ready, getting them educated, and, you know, getting them empowered to have that courage, to have that strength, and get those new coping mechanisms before they ever think about the intervention. That's
So
part of it.
many of our listeners have never really understood what an intervention might be like. I know you each do them and you're very familiar. Can you give us a story of one of your interventions, and Jenny, one that you did that our listeners could understand what families are going to experience?
Sure.
Well, we just did a case in point. Mom and dad are in their 70s, and now they're the caretakers for their 52-year-old. And she's severe mental health. She's been to several psychiatric wards, keeps failing, and the family's been trying to control this for the last 6 months.
Wow.
And it's just, we're getting the same cycle. She's going in and out. She gets 4 days, and then she's back at her house, then we're back to cycling. And then she ends up back in the hospital in another 2 more weeks. Finally, the family surrendered, and we were able to step in and intervene and coach them, guide them step by step, and we stay throughout the process while she's in a good facility where she's getting long-term care, so she can take a minute from all the distractions, all the stuff that's been around her, and really focus on her life. Because she was struggling with hoarding issues on top of psychiatric issues, and then adding substance into this too. So it was a variety of things that was going on with her.
So you're able to bring her to get some help?
Yes, she is in a program now, and she's going to be there for quite a while.
Wonderful.
Good long 90-day at least.
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
Kevin?
And I really, the credit to Jenny and that case, and with great humility of what we do is, the parents, they're coming to the end of their life, and their greatest fear, is any family's fear, is what, God forbid, would happen when and that was their fear, when mom and dad would pass away. What would happen with their child? Who would take care of their adult child? And what you guys so eloquently and so passionately do about caregiving, and it was the adult child, and who would take care of their adult child after they had passed away with mental health and substance abuse issues. And I think one of the cases that recently that we were blessed to do was another situation where it was an older adult. It was a brother and sister, and interventions work kind of two ways. It's a preventive medicine we do for the younger adults, right, 17, 25, 30, et cetera, or the last hope we have for older adults. And in this particular case, it sticks out in my mind because, again, interventions have been around since the late 60s, but still, a lot of individuals just don't understand what that is. And so this was a sister who had grown up with a brother that had acute alcoholism for many, many years, functional for, a good part of his life. But as he entered into, the older, kind of older age, thank you very much, David, and he and her both, really coming to that older age in their life, where she had been really kind of unaware that she just let her brother's alcohol with just kind of continue consume him, and not really knowing, as much as she loved him, and just not understanding and not being educated about there was something you could do, being told nothing you can do until your brother hits a bottom. So as much as she loved her brother through the years of their lives, and seeing the kind of the progression of the disease of alcoholism, and so she had reached out to us, and we were able to educate her, empower her. There is something you can do. And so for 20 plus years, she didn't know what to do, and didn't think she could do anything. And so, her being in her 60s and her brother in his 70s, for the first time, after all those years, we were blessed and privileged to come in and really empower her, educate her, right? And being able to separate the disease of alcoholism in their lives, and getting her brother into an appropriate treatment center.
And it began with
great.
a phone call.
Exactly.
David?
I'm listening to this, and Paul, I think you and I are interventionists because to a great degree, it starts with that first phone call. And you know how often our phone rings and somebody says, I've been doing this, I can't do it any longer. my mom, my kid, whatever it may be, has got this, that, and the other thing. And I said, well, you're more than just a parent or a sibling. You're a family caregiver. And, well, what do I do? And some respects, they've hit the bottom. All right. Obviously, somebody with autism or Alzheimer's can't hit the bottom. It's the caregiver that hits the bottom. And they're ready either by frustration, their own health, or whatever the other issues may be, to reach out and try and find a way to work through what is still a continuing responsibility in caregiving. But how do they cope with it? What are the skills? And what are the practical skills? Because as we always say, and I'll hand you back the microphone in a moment, family caregiving is not a disease. We can't give you a caregiving pill. We can only guide you with proven activity, steps, knowledge, discussion points that we know over the years that we've refined and work so that you can put that together as your own package and let it work for you. And so as I was listening to you and you, Jenny, make that discussion about interventionists, I said, boy, that sounds like us. The only thing I would have made different on your discussion is you called them caretakers, and those are the guys that mow the lawn at the cemetery. We're dealing with caregivers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Actually, we're really
Well, they're taking care of.
I
These
know.
parents are taking care of the individual.
I think a more accurate word is care partners,
Yes,
because
I agree.
that's really what we're doing.
I really do.
Did you want to respond to David, or?
No, I think he absolutely articulated that wonderfully. It's just, when you, the family, are at your bottom, when you're in that place, whether it's, mental health or Alzheimer's or addiction issues or whatever, sometimes the people with mental health and substance abuse or substance abuse, they get to anesthetize their feelings and emotions. And then people that have neurological issues, they're in that place. But for the caregivers, for the people that are the family that are affected by whatever that is, as you alluded to, David, when they're at their bottom, when they're financially, they're emotionally, they're mentally in that place, that's when they're ready. As painful as that is, and for you guys
we
to
usually
really
refer to it, they come to us when their hair's on fire.
exactly.
And and that's when they get called names, an enabler, when really they are victims of the disease themselves. It's almost like post-traumatic stress disorder, that they just simply can't handle it anymore, and they really need a professional to come in and give them some guidance. I was looking at some of the varying things that you do, from prescription medication, mental health issues, gambling addictions, a wide range of things. Tell us a little bit about the uniqueness of of what KD Consulting actually does.
Well, we really do a variety of services, not just interventions for mental health or substance abuse, co-occurring disorders, but also in really helping bring change as a family, in a company that really bridges that gap between treatment centers that provide those services and families in crisis to the patient, from life coaching, sober, transports, getting them, they want treatment, they want to get.
What does that mean, sober transport?
Really what that means is when we talk about addiction and we have somebody that wants to go to treatment, let's say they're in, Minnesota and they want to go to California or but the family's worried, or the individual themselves may be worried. It's such a challenge to get on that plane, or, to get from point A to B, point B or C without stopping by the liquor store or even leaving their home. So really the job of us, that role is really to come in and to help them, really hold their hand, to get them to the appropriate place in a safe manner, emotionally, physically, and really kind of be that, caregiver, if you will, for that moment in time, in a sober, safe way.
And as a willing participant, not that they're being dragged.
Right, exactly. That's a whole kind of different field, in that sense that the individual is willing, they want help, but again, they're afraid and paralyzed by, what they're facing.
And there's almost a stereotype from television. You see it on TV, and it's always a confrontation and there's always yelling and screaming.
Right.
But with a good interventionist, it's really a cooperative effort where this is a decision that was made to help.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So, we do silver transports, we do interventions, life coaching. When we talked about both David and you and Jenny in talking about that continuum of care, as a caregiver and really getting them empowered and getting them. So it's after treatment. What does that look like? What does it look like for the family, right? What does that look like for the individual? So it's a continuum of care, and what what that role is really to get them to the appropriate places with a therapist, continuum care, whatever that looks like. So that's the job of kind of a sober life coach.
Yeah, because we want to make sure that they're implementing what they learned in treatment. It's not you just go to treatment, we're done, we're cured. We want to make sure that they're following through and they're taking the steps that they need to, doing, getting a sponsor, following their outpatient continuum
the
care.
Therapist. I think the misconception, whatever it is, whether it's mental health or substance abuse, and and again, just the passion of caregiving, the family. We get toxic, and you alluded to something, Paul. This word is, and I mean it with tremendous respect to our the field of healthcare providers. You have to stop being enabling and codependent. What does that look like, and what does that really mean? What is that language when you're dealing with somebody that is your loved one?
Yes.
Yes. If we look it up in the textbooks of enabling and codependency, we're doing this or we're doing that. But really, what is that? That's so foreign for somebody that is in the front line of that. And as you both know in your personal lives and taking care of your family, right? But that's your loved one. We're not saying no to your loved one. We're saying no to whatever that is. And trying to get the caregiver, the person, the family. So I think it's important that when we deal with mental health in the role that Jenny and I do in dealing with addiction, mental health, or whatever that looks like. So we take out the patient, right? When we talk about intervention, we intervene in the disease of addiction that's paralyzing the family and the individual, right? And we get them in an environment, right, that's conducive for healing and recovery, right? But what about that family, right? How do they get help? Where do they go? And so it's kind of a multi kind of
It's the whole family spectrum.
It really is, David. You take the patient out of the environment, the toxic environment, but the family has been, solidified. They've been paralyzed. They've been debilitarized by addiction or mental health or whatever that is. Where do they go? How do they get help? So it really is about putting the patient in recovery and treatment, and then getting the healing for it. Because when you put that individual back in the family dynamics, right, and the family have not gotten any kind of help of the healthcare professional that says you got to stop being codependent, you got to stop being enabling. Well, what does that mean? Yeah. And where do I go? And how do I really get help? Because when the loved one comes back into the environment of the family, and if the family has not gotten any new tools, they haven't gotten a therapist, they haven't gone to, some of the support groups that are so wonderful in dealing with that and getting them empowered and getting them educated, not just, just verbally kind of, well, this is what's been going on in that trauma that you alluded to, but really getting the coping mechanisms of the healing process for them independently, right? Independently, right? So family goes to there's wonderful programs and 12-step programs and, family programs where the family independently can get the healing. And then, right, the individual, the family member comes back in the family component, and look what's happened. Now the individual's gotten help, the family's gotten help, and that's when, the healing really begins.
So if you take a leper out of a leper colony and you cure them and you put them right back in, what is going to happen? And what was going through my mind as you was talking, Kevin, was that we've seen so many times with families, particularly those that are well-to-do,
right?
So much of the focus was put on the one who was the addicted one. It was the siblings now that started acting out and starting having problems because they were just neglected, basically, dealing with the crisis on hand. What's been your experience with that?
As far as, siblings, We encourage families, especially because a lot of times when they're under the age of 14, we don't involve them because there's still a boundary there because they're still
Right.
too young to comprehend what really is going on here. But we encourage families to enforce a child therapist or someone in
Great.
additional to what we've done to helping them so they can comprehend this. Because as they get older, they're going to understand. But we want to help develop them so they don't turn to the same behaviors or the things and repeat the cycle.
So what I'm hearing is really a collaborative team of professionals who are really skilled at this particular problem.
Absolutely, Paul.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
it's not a question of somebody going away, coming back, and being cured. It's that the family also needs to be cured. Because I know just with David and I with caregivers, when that caregiving stops, there's a vacuum that occurs. And now what am I supposed to do? And when they come back, how do I not revert to the old roles that I played before?
Very much so. And I think, in touching base on that question that you were asking in regards to the dynamics of siblings and families and family dynamics, whether it's a wealthy family or any families in general, there's dysfunctional coping mechanisms that the family members, that the standard answer that I hear, if there is such a thing that we hear, is really, well, it's their problem. It's not my problem.
Yeah.
Right.
My problem is that if they would just change, I wouldn't have a problem, right? And that's not true. It really speaks to that piece. They can't see it. They're too close. It's they're in that, and it's a very delicate matter to get the sibling, the loved one of that kind of those buzzwords. It's codependent, enabling, or their problem. Why do I need to get help? Right? Because independent of whether or not the individual gets help, it's do you go on to the bitter end with those resentments and with that anger and all of those things? But I don't have those things. Well, sure you do. You do. How can you not?
It's part of being human.
That's it. That's it. So if you can get those, those roles changed, if you can get the person in a loving way, and sometimes you need to really get in there and say, you know what? Let me show you what I mean. And then, when that happens, that's when, the real recovery can happen. Not just for the independent of the person, but for the,
One more
sibling.
question before we take our last break.
Sure.
David talks about, we've been taught how to buy a car or how to buy a house, but we've never been taught how to buy a nursing home, for example. And there are so many recovery centers and so many that are opening up.
Mm-hmm.
As a consumer, how do you judge one from the other and the one that would be right for your loved one?
Well, with our treatment options, the way we look at it is this clinically appropriate? Can we financially afford this? Do we have insurance?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many options. Do the research. It's key because not all of them are going to be the same. You want to make sure it's clinically appropriate. If we're looking at dual diagnosis, mental health, or substance abuse, or anything else co-occurring with that, you want to look at all the verities to make sure that it's the appropriate program.
Absolutely.
Dual diagnosis. Explain to our listeners, please, what that is.
Dual diagnosis is when someone's dealing with substance abuse along with mental health. So it could be a variety with schizoaffective, bipolar, depression, on top of alcoholism or the main substance that they're abusing, chemical dependency.
And just to add to Jenny's, point in your question, that is a great point. Where is the kind of standard, and where do we go? How do we get that type of help? When we talk about, mental health or substance abuse facilities, specifically, treatment centers that deal with those issues, JACO, which is a joint accreditation of healthcare organizations. Again, those funny little acronyms. But it's the gold standard, really. And it literally is a gold standard. It's a seal. And their website, you can go online, you can get that information, but it's the joint accreditation of healthcare organizations. And when you're looking at those types of facilities, there's some basic questions. Are you a dual diagnosed facility? My loved one has, depression and alcoholism, right? And then do you take insurance? And then are you licensed by the state? And how can I check on those things? And so that's what really JACO does is, across the United States, when we're dealing, you ask that type of, are you JACO accredited? Because that organization independently comes in. You can't buy that. You can't say, here's $1 million, give me that, A+ business rating or whatnot. But really independently says that if you want us to come in and to, really from top to bottom of your facility, then you have to be very vulnerable, because we're, if we find what we find and it's not appropriate, then we're not. So that, I think, through the years in my, experience and in our experience, when families have asked us that question, that's one of the real basics, for families when they're just so overwhelmed by that. And then the other piece, just real quickly, is that, there's 3 things that we don't deviate from in a neutral place. I always tell families, we tell families, is it clinically appropriate for your loved one? 2, can the family afford it? And 3, would I put my loved one in that program? And if it doesn't match those things, we're not going to really, recommend that.
And that's a good reason to have a good interventionist, because they're going to know facilities and they're going to be able to evaluate what's going on and to help that family make that decision.
Absolutely. I think the word ethics, again, is one of those buzzwords, and thank you, Paul. It seems to be a lost art, and whatever, especially in healthcare, unfortunate. And I mean it with tremendous respect to my field and to the, but as you guys know, on ground zero of trying to get your loved ones help, right? But ethics, I think that is, in our society today, is a great word, but is a word that seems to be foreign. And that's
unfortunately.
The sad part, unfortunately.
David, before we go to our break, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, this is too fascinating a conversation, and I don't want to go to a break.
Okay.
All right. But what I do want to say is that in listening to all of this, and just like we talk about evaluating a nursing home and assisted living facility, yes, you can have a good housekeeping seal of approval, and certainly JACO is a very respected organization. But
they evaluate hospitals.
They
as well.
evaluate hospitals. They evaluate nursing homes. They are the
Surgical
joint
centers.
accrediting, organization for healthcare organizations. And so when you see JACO, at least you know that first major hurdle on a peer level, as far as the standards of the industry, they have made that cut. After that, you've got to make sure that not only is it the 3 standards that you just added, is it affordable, would I send my family there, et cetera, but when it comes to things on our level, like a nursing home or assisted living, is it culturally appropriate? Have I looked in enough places? More importantly, today I was at one assisted living facility, and it's been purposely designed for a dementia patient. So when you walk in, the room's small. It doesn't have a shower in it. And so people say, well, if I had to stay there, but you can't evaluate it like you would a hotel room, because it's purposely designed so, A, they don't hurt themselves in the shower, for argument's sake, and that it keeps them out and socializing rather than kind of stored up in their room, hiding out. And so it's also, I think, what you do in also recommending is that we manage expectations about what we're going to see, because most people have never walked into a treatment facility, whether or not it's for addiction or whether or not it represents a facility where we're going to place a loved one for long-term care. So I find what you were saying is completely appropriate. And even though we'd like to let somebody else do it, we have to make our own homework. We have to go do at least the process, so that nobody comes back and says, well, you put me there and it didn't work, or I didn't like it, or it was the wrong place to be, even though it came with your blessing and recommendation. So we always make sure that, in your case, it's a little bit different, because it's hard for somebody to go out and shop, addiction centers or treatment facilities, rather. But when you're making a decision for the kind of facilities that we deal with, where it's also a family decision, we've got to make sure that you've seen enough of them to know what's out there and whether it's appropriate for you and your loved one. So, I mean, that was, I think, once again, when I'm listening to you, I find such commonality in what we do in intervening with the caregiver and what you
Caregiving
do.
is agnostic.
Well, absolutely, and it really doesn't make a difference. Age,
Geography, money,
illness,
ethnicity.
family dynamics. I mean, I think, respectfully, we're singing out of the same hymnal.
I really, David, I want to applaud you on that, because it brings to that point, because it is so daunting, whether assisted living facilities, whether it's hospitals, whether it's treatment centers, do your homework, get the information, go tour those facilities if you can. And then if you're dealing with a professional, ask those questions. Have you toured the program? Have you put a loved one? Have you put a patient? Have you put an individual in that program? That's what we do. I've had the blessing of building a couple treatment centers from the ground up. When I refer a facility, that's the piece is, I want to go tangibles. I want to talk to the therapist. I want to talk to the psychiatrist. I want to walk those halls. I want to see what it's going to be like for the patient, for the individual. So I can, because when we do this work, it's like you and I right now, and looking in your eyes and saying, you know what, there's those three things that I'm not going to deviate from, because when we deal with this, right, and when it's that one, it goes to speak to ethics. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a great program, and right, really? Would you put your loved one in that program? Have you been to that program, Kevin? Do they really do the work that you're saying that they do? So when I look at someone and I come into, and I have the blessing, we have the blessing of coming into a family's life, that's precious. You get one shot at it. And so it's so important, I always tell facilities and I tell families, because the families aren't going to call the facility. They're going to call who? They're going to call us. They're going to call you guys. They're going to call, us, Jenny. And I said, Kevin, you promised. You said this was a great program, right? And so when I deal with facilities and I say, and I tell them that, you see, I get one shot of what we do in this country, one shot. And so I can't, have a program that does half measures. I deal with the toughest modality. We deal with the toughest modality. We talk about interventions in that whole world of denial and addiction. And it's so important in that one shot. I need that treatment center to go above and beyond. I need them to roll up their sleeves. I need them to think that is my family member.
You spoke about costs before, and I've seen recovery happen in the halls of churches, and some of them are like five-star resorts. Can you address that issue of cost of treatment and what a family might expect to spend, sort of a range in helping that loved one?
And Paul, before they answer that question, can you... there are times we turn around and we say, well, that expensive car is a great car because it cost me $100,000, but yet my $30,000 Ford will still get me from point A to point B. So is it that the more expensive facilities are better, or is it just that it's what traffic will bear? And I mean that very respectfully, because it's not easy to take somebody for 90 days or whatever it is and give them the kind of treatment. So I know there's a big cost to it, but is money the measure of the facility, or is it what you just said, knowing who's there, knowing what needs to be done?
And, it's a tough question to a certain extent. It speaks to that piece, David and Paul, really of, well, you get what you pay for. Well, yes, that's true. Healthcare in general, I don't think we have to tell the audience, all of us, experience it at whatever level. But it's the quality of care. It's, and it goes to speak to the piece of, is there healthcare insurance? I deal with treatment centers that if there's healthcare insurance, we pay those premiums, right? And we rely on that health care. And it is tough for the industry of health care, insurance, and treatment centers. So, I look for, the clinical appropriateness of what this facility offers. And two, can the family financially afford it? Is it a program? Is it whatever, type of...
Is it worth the money?
Is it worth the money? But what is it that you're getting for that money? Is it a dual diagnosis treatment center? What's the cost? What's the duration of days that you're going to get, inpatient? And are they insurance receptive? Are they going to you know, are they going to, because, and this could be a topic all on its own, because, you know, treatment centers, hospitals, they're being paralyzed by the cost of, you know, the rising cost of health care. So insurance carriers on their hand, you know, in a neutral place, you know, it's being saturated. So, you know, the one place, and I'm just going to speak, a lot of treatment centers, Betty Ford, Hazleton, great programs, but they have been dictated by the level of care, unfortunately, by insurance carriers. Kind of a quick 101. And so, you know, those types of treatment centers have said, we're not going to be dictated by that. We are going to what's called super bill. We're going to get the monies up front so we can do the quality of care and the work that is needed to treat your loved one without being dictated by a carrier in a neutral place, God bless them, saying that they can't do, you know, that work. You have to step down your patient's level of care.
And no matter how much you spend or don't spend, recovery is something that has to be accepted, and program needs to be worked, and family has to do their work if you're going to have any sort of result.
Absolutely. So, you know,
I mean, the help is out there. So if you're looking for free treatment, if you don't have insurance, try to get state insurance, because it's going to get you some coverage where you can still get long-term help or short-term help. It's a start, you know, and insurance is going to save financially. Without insurance, treatment can be, you know, in the thousands. It can be very costly. So,
well, we have a few minutes left before we wrap up, and I can't believe how quickly this time has really gone. Your last few words that you would like to leave our audience.
It's going to come from Jenny, because we have 1 minute left.
Uh-oh.
All right. So how do they get in touch with KD Consulting?
you can visit our website at www.kdconsulting.org or contact us at 866-631-0026.
Again, please.
866-631-0026.
And that's a complimentary call, is it not?
Yes, we do free consultations.
And to our worldwide audience, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, a wonderful, prosperous new year. And to Paul, my co-host, couldn't have done it without you. Let's take it home.
Thank you. And to our caregivers, please take care of yourselves. Have a great holiday.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver reality show. Each week, David Levy, a gerontologist, and Paul Vattiato, a caregiver expert with a combined over 25 years of experience, providing practical and realistic help to caregivers struggling to keep up with the needs of a loved one who are unable to care for himself or herself. To reach David Levy, email him at david@caregiverreality.com, or to reach Paul Vattiato, email paul@caregiverreality.com. And find out more online. Just go to caregiverreality.com. See you next week for another exciting show.